Things avoidants do when your silence feels permanent. Have you ever noticed how an avoidant suddenly starts acting strange when your silence stops feeling like a temporary break and starts to feel permanent? At first, they might seem completely fine, even relieved. They tell themselves they finally have space, finally no more emotional pressure, finally peace. But underneath that calm exterior, something very different starts to happen. This video will take you deep inside the avoidant psychology to show you the hidden things they do when your silence starts to feel real, lasting, and permanent. At the beginning, avoidants usually enter what I call the false calm phase. It's the part where they convince themselves they're free. They rationalize your silence by telling themselves things like, "It's for the best," or "I knew this wouldn't last anyway." They might even act distant or indifferent if they see you online or hear about you. But this isn't peace. It's avoidance dressed as control. They aren't comfortable. They're suppressing discomfort. Avoidants have trained themselves to survive through distance. So when you go silent, they tell themselves a story that keeps them safe from feeling loss. They pretend they're unfazed. But that's only the first layer. Then comes the checking phase. Avoidants are curious creatures, even when they pretend not to be. When your silence lingers longer than they expected, they start to peek, quietly, indirectly. They check your social media, scroll through your posts, or reread old messages without replying. They'll look for small signs of life. Have you moved on? Are you posting differently? Do you seem happy? They won't ask you directly. That would expose vulnerability, but they'll lurk from a distance. And here's the twist. They're not looking for love. They're looking for safety. If you seem happy without them, it triggers the avoidant's biggest fear, that someone finally detached first. They start realizing they're no longer the one controlling the distance. Next is the rationalizing phase. This is where they start rewriting the story to soothe their ego. They'll convince themselves you were always too emotional, too needy, too complicated. They'll tell friends, "Yeah, we just weren't a good match." Or, "They wanted too much from me." It's not about you anymore. It's about preserving their self-image. Avoidants cope through logic, not emotion. So when your silence starts feeling permanent, they build a wall of rational explanations to stop the emotional wave from crashing in. It's like watching someone patch holes in a sinking boat instead of admitting it's filling with water. But deep down, they sense something different this time. The silence isn't a game. It's not manipulation. It feels final. Then comes the subtle testing phase. This one's tricky because it often looks like nothing, or worse, like a random message from out of nowhere. When your silence stretches long enough, the avoidant starts to wonder if they still have access to you. So they test the waters. They might send something casual like, "Hey, hope you're doing well," or react to one of your stories. Sometimes they'll send a random meme or ask about something meaningless. But these aren't innocent check-ins. They're probes, emotional radar signals. They're not ready to reconnect emotionally, but they want to know if the door's still open. And if you respond, they feel a rush of relief, followed immediately by distance again. Because the moment they feel you're still emotionally available, the fear of engulfment returns. But if you stay silent, truly silent, something begins to shift. That's when they enter the realization phase. Avoidants live in delayed reactions. They don't feel the loss in real time. They feel it later, when they realize the silence isn't temporary. That's when the emptiness hits. They start to feel the weight of your absence, the warmth, the familiarity, the way you made them feel understood even when they didn't deserve it. It's a strange and painful paradox. Avoidants only start feeling connected when they finally lose the person. When your silence becomes permanent, their emotional defenses start to backfire. They begin missing the connection they spent months pushing away. And then comes the mirror phase. This is when they finally start facing themselves. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects back all the emotions they avoided. Loneliness, regret, guilt, vulnerability. Without your presence to absorb their distance, they have to sit with themselves. And that's something avoidants are rarely good at. They may start to notice patterns from their past, how they ran when things got close, how they turned love into fear. Some even start seeking distraction, New people, new hobbies, anything to numb the echo of your absence. But the silence keeps echoing louder. Because silence isn't just the lack of contact, it's the sound of accountability. Eventually, they might reach what I call the curiosity and confusion phase. They'll start replaying memories, wondering when things shifted. They might scroll through old photos or reread your messages trying to decode where they went wrong. They'll remember moments of closeness that contradict their rationalizations, the tenderness, the laughter, the calm you brought. Avoidants are experts at forgetting emotional details, but when silence becomes permanent, those details start resurfacing uninvited. They might even start comparing you to others, realizing how emotionally safe they felt with you compared to new connections that now feel shallow. That's the irony of the avoidant. They crave closeness, but only value it once it's gone. As time passes, some avoidants enter the attempted re-entry phase. They might circle back with a sudden emotional message like, "I've been thinking about you," or "I miss what we had." But even then, it's not always because they're ready for true intimacy. Often, it's because your silence has stripped them of their emotional safety net. They're testing whether they can still be comforted by your presence. If you respond warmly, the old pattern risks repeating: connection, fear, withdrawal. But if you hold your boundaries and stay grounded, you become something they've never encountered. Someone who can love but doesn't chase. And that contrast can shake them to their core. The final stage is the reckoning phase. This is when the avoidant starts to see the pattern clearly. They realize that silence isn't rejection, it's reflection. It's what happens when someone refuses to carry the emotional weight they keep dropping. In rare cases, avoidants start confronting their attachment wounds, sometimes even seeking therapy or introspection. They begin to understand that avoidance was never freedom. It was fear in disguise. And they may finally grasp that your silence wasn't punishment. It was peace. It was you reclaiming yourself. So when your silence feels permanent, remember this. It's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of self-respect. Avoidance might circle, check, rationalize, and test, but your job isn't to decode them anymore. Your silence has already spoken the truth louder than any message ever could. It says, "I'm not waiting for you to choose me. I'm choosing myself." And whether or not they ever come to terms with that, you've already done the one thing they couldn't: face the silence and made peace with it. Because in the end, the most powerful thing you can do with an avoidant isn't to chase them, convince them, or prove your worth. It's to let your silence become the boundary they could never cross and the lesson they'll never forget.